Against her better judgment, Heidi allowed Tanner to come home that night. As angry as she was with him for his betrayal, she made vows to him when they got married. She demanded that he admit what he did. She knew it was true, so there was no use in lying. Tanner refused to admit his rendezvous with Holly. He knew it wouldn't do anything except hurt Heidi further if he was going to save their marriage. He had to act as if nothing happened. Oren wasn't his son, and he never touched Holly. It was the only way. Their argument was at a standstill. Neither side was going to budge. In one day, their strong marriage was crumbling at the seams. Tanner begged for Heidi's forgiveness. Heidi would not accept and suggested he either sleep on the couch or at the office for the foreseeable future. Tanner decided to stay at home. He would not allow Heidi to push him out of his own house. He might have betrayed his marriage vows, but he was still Heidi's husband and they were still married. He would do whatever it took to make this right. Heidi slept alone in the bed that she once shared with her husband. She did not understand how upside down her life became because of the actions of her twin sister and husband. She felt too disgusted to even look at Tanner. She didn't know how they would recover from this. Tanner slept on the couch for several weeks while they figured out how to salvage their marriage. Tanner would do everything he could to save his marriage. After 2 months of squabbling and disagreeing with how to proceed, Heidi informed Tanner that she had filed for divorce. Tanner felt powerless of what to do. Tanner was heartbroken, utterly heartbroken. He knew that what was happening was the consequences of his own actions. However, he had been powerless to Holly's seduction. No man could have held strong to that. He blamed Holly for the mess she created. He had to save his marriage. Heidi would soon give birth to their child, and he had to be a part of it. He would do everything in his power to stop this divorce. On the day they were to sign the divorce papers, Tanner begged Heidi to reconsider. He told her that she was the love of his life and he wanted to be with her forever. Heidi replied that he should have thought about that before he slept with her sister and ruined their marriage. She and their child would be fine without him. Tanner and Heidi signed divorce papers. Heidi's final words to him before entering the room was that if he really loved her, he would not put up a fight and sign the divorce papers. As much as Tanner wanted to fight for his marriage, this was the last little bit of respect and dignity he could give Heidi. He did actually love her, and this proved it. Even if that meant their marriage was over forever. He upheld their vows for better and for worse. She did not. Heidi told him that she would like him to gather his things and move out immediately. She did not want him present at the birth, and for all intents and purposes, this baby did not have a father. She did not want her child to grow up in an unstable family. She would rather be a single mom and raise her child in a house full of love and happiness. Tanner pleaded with her, but she did not budge. He wanted to fight her on this, but she was right. He would be a terrible father to this baby. He already screwed up one child whom he barely knew. He wouldn't do that to Heidi's child. Back in Britekester, Holly celebrated a job well done. She set out to destroy Tanner's life for what he had left her with, and she did so. She did feel bad for hurting her sister so terribly, but she also thought that this happening was good for her. Heidi's life can't be perfect all of the time. This heartbreak would only make her stronger, and she would thank Holly for it eventually. After a few weeks of stewing on what she had done, she realized that her impulsive behavior had caused her to lose her family for good. She had not received one call from any family. They were done with her. No more chances to redeem herself. She had felt alone with Oren before she had shared his paternity, but that was nothing compared to this. Now she was truly alone. All she had was Oren. She knew she had screwed up. She missed her family, especially Heidi. Oren had been even more inconsolable in the weeks following the baby shower. Holly tried to tune him out, but it was difficult. She couldn't do 17 more years of this by herself. She screwed everything up and was still left with nothing and no one. Heidi had stayed silent about the state of her marriage to both of their families. After the divorce was finalized and Tanner was out of the home, she invited her mother over to break the news. Betsy was proud of her daughter for making such a difficult decision, but neither her sweet girl was too good for Tanner. Heidi was confident in her decision, but was terrified to give birth by herself and to start her journey into motherhood alone. Betsy would never allow her daughter to go through something like this alone, so she promised that she would be there for Heidi during every step of this ordeal. Betsy was grieving the loss of one of her children. Holly was alive and well, but she could not give that child any more chances. She had destroyed the lives of their family more than once, and she did it with no remorse. She tried her best to raise Holly, but she was too far gone to be saved. She had to focus on the children who still had bright futures ahead of them. Betsy held her baby in her arms and allowed her to go to sleep. Heidi looked exhausted and had been carrying so much stress and sadness since Holly's revelation. It was Betsy's responsibility to keep Heidi distracted and in good spirits while she neared the end of her pregnancy and welcomed her little bundle of joy into the world. As Heidi's due date approached, she tried to stay healthy and in a positive mindset. She practiced prenatal exercises to try and induce labor. She just wanted her baby in her arms to make all this heartache worth it. Betsy stayed with her daughter for the final month of her pregnancy. Her other children were in the very capable hands of her husband, and she wanted to give her oldest daughter her undivided attention for the first time in her life. Mother and daughter bonded during this time. Neither realized how much energy and time Holly had taken away from them. Holly had been the center focus of their family, because she forced the dynamic to be that way. Now they were free to strengthen their relationship even more. Heidi went into labor a week before her due date. Her contraction pains were intense, but wasn't anything she couldn't handle. She could manage temporary pain so she could meet her baby. Carla came to the hospital to support her former sister-in-law. She had distanced herself from her mother and brother because of what happened. Her mother was supportive of Tanner's chose to be unfaithful to his wife because she preferred the other twin. Carla loved Heidi as a sister and friend, so she would show her support to her rather than her blood. She would help Heidi in any way she could. She would be the best auntie to this baby and make sure he or she would have enough love from both sides of the family. Adriana also joined Betsy and Carla in the room to show her support. She had been through Holly's betrayal and knew how devastating it was. Heidi had it worse because she was giving birth to Tanner's child. She worried that Heidi would never recover from such an injustice. Heidi sat on her hospital bed and focused on her breathing. She felt such gratitude and love for the women in her life who had stuck by her side. A small part of her felt sad that Holly wasn't here. It was the irrational part of her that would always love her sister no matter what. This was never how she envisioned the birth of her first child to happen. She thought the father of her child would be by her side and not an adulterous pig. Her heart hurt because the two most special people in her life betrayed her. Despite the sadness, Heidi was so happy to have the people who truly cared for her there to welcome her little bundle of joy. They spoke words of encouragement which helped her feel ready to give birth. Adriana held her closest friend and sister as they swayed together. She had been through childbirth before and knew just what to do to progress labor. Thankfully, Heidi's labor was going by quickly and she had no complications. Heidi held onto her sister and felt so grateful that she always had her to lean on. She was the one person who never betrayed her. She felt guilty for not being honest with her all those years ago about Holly. Adriana was right. She deserved Heidi's loyalty, not Holly. Heidi forced all of her self-pity and depressed thoughts away. She would not feel this way when she welcomed her child into the world. Her baby would not be forced to experience any of the unresolved feelings Heidi had about her situation. Her child was innocent in all of this and deserved a happy childhood. She pushed with all of her might. She would be strong for her baby because it was her responsibility to be the best mother she possibly could be. She knew that despite Tanner ruining their marriage and breaking her heart, this child was meant to be hers. Heidi gave birth to a beautiful and healthy baby girl. She decided to name the child Haley. Heidi stared in awe of her little Haley. She had never seen anything so beautiful and small. She looked at that precious face and promised her daughter that she would give her the best life possible. She had a good paying job and an entire village to shower Haley with love. They didn't need Tanner tainting the incredible child that Haley would be. They would be okay. Just the two of them. After Heidi had kicked Tanner out of their home, he called his mother for guidance. He had stayed for a few weeks in his office, but he needed a more permanent solution. His mother always gave him sound advice, and he was in dire need of being told what to do. Teresa met her son at a local diner in Willow Creek. Tanner caught her up on what had happened to his marriage. Teresa wasn't surprised that Heidi abandoned him. She knew that girl was not good enough for her son. She suggested that they travel to Britakista, and he rectified the relationship with Holly. She was a woman worth fighting for, and she had already gifted him a strong son. Tanner was unsure if he wanted to be with Holly, but he didn't know what else to do. Teresa accompanied her son to Holly's home. She knocked on the front door and was excited to play matchmaker for her son. Tanner, on the other hand, did not think this was the right thing to do. He had already missed out on over a year of his son's life and treated Holly poorly. Holly was shocked but overjoyed to see Teresa and Tanner at her doorstep and promptly invited them inside. Teresa greeted her warmly, and it made Holly miss having a maternal figure in her life. Teresa gifted Holly with a large sum of money. She apologized profusely for her son's poor fatherly instincts and hopes that this money will help Holly and her grandbaby to live comfortably. For a long time, Holly was grateful because she really did need the money. Teresa urged Tanner to speak privately with Holly. Teresa took her first grandchild in her arms. Little Oren was a spitting image of his father, and it reminded Teresa of her own son as an infant. Part of her felt angry at her son for allowing his child to live in such a small home and only one parent. She was also angry, as she had already missed out on so much of Oren's infancy. Tanner apologized to Holly for treating her the way he did on the day of the wedding. He insisted that he was simply overcome with pre-wedding jitters and was not acting like himself. He lied and told her that he was happy that she went through with the pregnancy, and now they had an incredible child together. Holly was thrilled that Tanner had come to his senses and decided to choose her and Oren. She had waited for this day for a very long time. She forgave him without a second thought. Tanner scooted closer to Holly and whispered in her ear that he should have chosen her instead of Heidi. All words felt like poison as they escaped his lips. None of this was true, but he knew this was what his mother wanted, and he had to restore his reputation at the law firm. He promised that he would make her a very happy woman if she chose to accept him back into her life. He would provide for she and Oren, and they would want for nothing. She wouldn't have to deal with Oren on her own, and she would get endless wealth and comfortability. This was the best case scenario. Holly was thoroughly surprised when Tanner got down on one knee and asked for Holly's hand in marriage. They only had one night of passion together that resulted in a child. They had never dated or even knew if they liked each other. Despite all of this, Holly accepted. All she had ever wanted was to be someone's wife. This was everything she had deserved, and it was finally coming true. Tanner knew that he had made a mistake the moment that he got down on one knee and proposed. His mother had pressured him into this. He barely knew Holly and certainly wasn't ready to be someone's husband for a second time. Still, the two made a vow to marry one another. Deep down, they both knew it was a terrible idea, but something good had to come out of this terrible situation. Holly officially introduced Tanner to his son. Tanner barely even knew how to hold a baby. Tanner looked at his son in his arms. He felt zero paternal instinct towards the boy. He looked at him and only saw the mistake that ended his marriage. He could never love him. He resented the boy for even being born. He realized that he made a terrible mistake by asking Holly to marry him and agreeing to be a father to Oren. He never wanted any of this responsibility. He only wanted to have some fun outside of his marriage. The one positive to this engagement was the fact that Tanner and Holly were able to recapture the passion they experienced that one night before the wedding. Both had fantasized about this night for months, and so much was riding on their intimacy being spectacular. Tanner's marriage ended and Holly had a baby for this passion. It needed to be present if their impending marriage would stand a chance. Tanner was not as attracted to Holly since she had given birth to Oren. She had struggled to shed the baby weight and did not look as she did that one night together. Their intimacy was not as they remembered it to be. They were out of sync, and it was not enjoyable for either of them. This was not an encouraging omen for their upcoming marriage and life together. Tanner snuck out of bed that night and attempted to bond with Oren. He was the only person who managed to get the infant to drink from a bottle. Oren seemed to like his father and enjoyed being held by him. Tanner saw the softness on the little boy's face and knew immediately that his son loved him. He could not force himself to love the boy back. His birth ruined his whole life, and he could never forgive that. A few weeks after settling into Holly's home, Tanner received a call in the middle of the night from his father. He had heard from Carla that Heidi gave birth to their child. Tanner had a little girl. His heart swelled with pride in a way that it never had for Oren. Tanner desperately wished that things had unfolded differently, and he was at the hospital right now with Heidi. He should be holding his newborn daughter in his arms, not playing pretend with Holly and Oren. Tanner remained downstairs for the majority of the night. He couldn't bring himself to lay next to Holly and pretend he loved her. He wallowed in self-pity for a long time. His desire for Holly ruined his life, and now he didn't even have that. He had nothing. He couldn't be in this home anymore, and he couldn't be anywhere near Willow Creek. His law firm was branching out to Copperdale. He had originally declined the offer to move there because Heidi was pregnant. He knew that Holly was desperate to keep him, so she would follow him wherever he wanted to go. He needed that fresh start, even if it was with the family he didn't want. That morning, he informed Holly of what his plans were, and he began looking for houses in the newspaper. He was a wealthy lawyer, so he wanted a home that would reflect that status. Now was his time to be selfish and take whatever he wanted. After a week of looking at houses, Tanner found the perfect one. Holly was reluctant to sell her home and give up her humble life in Britannia, but she did so to make her relationship with Tanner work. They would raise their son in this extravagant home, and she finally had the life that she deserved. She and Tanner had been distant since the proposal, so she hoped that this house was their fresh start to actually fall in love and finally be happy. Holly had high hopes for their lives in Copperdale. Holly found it easier to be a mother to Oren with Tanner around. It may only be for appearances and to impress her husband-to-be, but it made Holly a better mother and Oren was a happier child. Forcing Tanner to be a part of their lives was the best thing to happen to them. Tanner got a head start on his paperwork for the new law firm in Copperdale. He had received a promotion for moving to their new branch and was made a partner. This gave him the opportunity to make more money, so he wanted to do a good job. Holly vowed that she would be a different woman in Copperdale. She would be the perfect housewife for Tanner. She researched recipes for meals that Tanner enjoyed and practiced when he was at work. She baked a beautiful cake for Oren's birthday. She hoped that father and son would grow more of a bond as he grew up. Oren deserved at least one parent who loved him, and Holly didn't know if that would ever be her. Holly and Tanner continued to play the part of doting parents to Oren to celebrate his birthday. Neither ever discussed the lack of warmth they both felt towards their child, but it was obvious to anyone who paid attention. Happy birthday, Oren. Oren's toddler trait is fussy. He will continue his streak of being a difficult child for his parents. Holly and Tanner fit their roles well as affectionate partners. Neither particularly liked the other, or acted as if they did. Each of them thought their partner was madly in love with them. The one thing that they genuinely bonded over was their indifference to Oren. Tanner was quick to reprimand the toddler when he would throw food to gain attention. Holly followed suit, so the spouses to be were a united front in disciplining their son. Holly would always clean Oren's messes. She couldn't comprehend why Oren was such an unruly toddler despite having two parents who constantly corrected him. It was frustrating. Tanner found solace in a bottle. He had hoped that moving into this huge house in a new city would make him feel better, but it only made him feel worse. There was even more distance between his real family and himself. He longed for Heidi and his daughter. The growing resentment for Holly and Oren was palpable. Oren was given every toe that his little mind could imagine and more. Tanner did this as a way to justify not spending time with him. The tot spent much of his time locked away in his room and forced to play by himself. He felt lonely and like his parents didn't like him. Holly showed her face around dinner and bedtime. She busied herself with housework and pampering herself during the day. She read her son bedtime stories to make him go to sleep faster. The change of environment had helped her to be a better mom, but she still didn't like to be around her child unless she had to. She was forced to be a mother, but that didn't mean she had to spend every moment with him. He was getting older and therefore was able to play by himself most of the time. Oren's grandmother, Teresa, had traveled to Copperdale to witness the courthouse union between Tanner and Holly. She held a soft spot for the boy because his birth was the reason that her son was able to divorce his terrible first wife. Tanner and Holly recited their vows in front of an officiant at the courthouse. They were only surrounded by Teresa and Oren. Holly had sent invitations to the rest of her family, but they never responded. They had given her radio silence since Heidi's baby shower. Part of her felt heartbroken that her family couldn't be supportive of her nuptials like they had been for the rest of her siblings, but the other part of her couldn't blame them. After all, she was marrying her sister's ex-husband. Tanner's father and sister declined the invitation to attend the wedding as well. He was thankful that all but his mother decided not to come. He was not proud of this union like he had been with Heidi, and he did not want to shout his relationship to the rooftops. Tanner recited the vows the officiant told him to. He did not write his own vows to Holly because he did not feel a love connection towards her. This union was only out of obligation and convenience, so he wasn't alone. Holly looked Tanner's eyes as he slipped the ring on her finger and saw just how void of love they were. Once again, she had won the man, but not their heart. Her victories were not satisfying because they didn't produce the one thing she longed for more than anything, which was love. Tanner kissed the bride and both sighed in disappointment. Now introducing Mr. and Mrs. Tanner and Holly Chandler. Fireworks had not flown in the bedroom since their rekindling. It was boring and unsatisfying. They tried to recreate their first time together by celebrating their nuptials with a bottle of liquid courage. Each of them consumed their fair share of shots. This was the perfect recipe to feel something towards one another. This worked well for her when she was with Glenn, and she hoped it worked for Tanner as well. The newlyweds migrated into the bedroom. For once, the passion returned to their bedroom antics. The liquid courage was coursing through both of them and lowered their standards. Tanner didn't think about Heidi, and Holly didn't think about all of the housework she needed to complete. They were only focused on each other and finally feeling something other than contempt. Because of the liquid courage, Tanner had forgotten about protection. They are a married couple now, so that wasn't something that he should worry about, but he didn't want any more children with Holly. This would prove to be a grim mistake. After a few weeks of being married, Holly confronted Tanner about the mistake they had made on their wedding night. She reminded him that they had not taken precautions during intimacy, and because of that, she could be pregnant. She had missed her period for the month and had been experiencing some morning sickness. Tanner reassured her that she could not possibly be pregnant after one indiscretion. Holly reminded him that it definitely was a possibility. That was how they conceived Oren. He told both she and himself that they shouldn't panic until she takes a pregnancy test and knows for sure. Holly stated that a woman always knows. Tanner lost his composure and pointed the blame at Holly. He accused her of getting him inebriated on purpose so she could further trap him by getting her pregnant again. She reminded him that he was to blame because he doesn't know how to use protection. Tanner tried to calm himself down while he sat outside of the bathroom as Holly determined the course of their future. He couldn't believe they were here a second time. He didn't want their first child together. He knew the same would be true for any other children they potentially conceived together. Holly sat on the toilet and peed on the stick. This was not the first time she was put in this position because of Tanner, so she didn't feel nervous this time around. They were now married, so she had financial security no matter what. He was stuck whether he liked it or not. She wanted another child because she hoped that she would love this one. Oren's birth caused chaos and sadness to everyone involved. This baby would be different. Holly was indeed pregnant again with Tanner's baby. She should feel upset, but she felt triumphant. Tanner could never leave her now. Holly rushed out of the bathroom and flung the pregnancy test at Tanner. He took the test in his hand and stared at the two pink lines in shock. Even though they were now married, he felt the exact same way he did when she had shown him the test on his wedding day. His immediate reaction was to ask her to terminate, but he bit his tongue. He had to let this ride out because he was stupid enough to marry her. This was his life now, and he was destined for a lifetime of misery and disappointment. Tanner hid himself away in his office for days following the news of Holly's pregnancy. He thought of Heidi often and wondered how their life would be if he hadn't destroyed their wonderful life together because of Holly. He figured that they would be happy right now, and raising their little girl together. Holly told her son about the baby in her belly. Oren's immediate reaction was excitement because having a sibling meant he wasn't going to be alone anymore. He would have a sibling to constantly play with and someone to keep him company when their parents inevitably left them alone for hours on end. His feelings changed on the matter when his mother let it slip that this baby was another chance at a perfect child and was a clean slate for her to be a good mother and dote on the baby. Oren threw a tantrum. He decided that he would rather play alone than have to share his parents with a sibling. He already had to fight for his parents' attention. He didn't want to fight even harder. He just wanted his parents to want to spend time with him. He felt like he was being replaced. Tanner made a conscious effort to spend time with his wife and son. He had taken on extra cases at the law firm intentionally, so that he was at home less and less. When he was home, they spent Saturday morning together. He cuddled his wife on the couch while watching the news and orange-colored pictures on the floor. They sometimes looked like the picture-perfect family. However, they were not the picture-perfect family. They were only playing those roles. Their masks would slip often, mainly when Holly brought up her pregnancy. Tanner did not want to know about Holly's health, nor did he care about the unborn child. Holly tricked him into fatherhood for a second time. and he wasn't going to pretend like he wasn't upset by their family expanding. He didn't want the child he had, let alone another one. Oren listened in on his parents' squabbles. They often forgot he was even in the room, so they did not hold back on how they felt about him. The words were hurtful, and it became clear to him at such a young age that he was not wanted. On days when Tanner did not have to stay late at the firm, he drowned his sorrows in a bottle the moment he got home. Home was supposed to be his solace, but he wanted to be anywhere but there. Holly felt more bonded to the child in her belly this time around. She had everything she could ever want, sans a husband who loved her. She didn't have to worry about her child living in squalor or herself struggling. Maybe she could love this baby, Oren took any family time he could get. He had gotten very good at playing by himself, but preferred to be in the company of his parents, even if they didn't acknowledge him. Even through pregnancy, Holly cooked away in the kitchen for every meal that Tanner would be present for. She let Oren get his own food for lunch because she didn't have anyone to perform for. She was becoming a much better chef and sometimes even earned a compliment from Tanner. It was these types of things that Holly lived for. She didn't get satisfaction by making her son smile or doing good deeds for no reason. She did things for the sole purpose of gaining validation and being complimented for the great person she was. At such a young age, Oren became eloquent in his speech and was highly intelligent compared to most kids his age. He practiced reading books out loud to himself to have clear enunciation. If his parents would not pay attention to him just from his presence alone, he would talk their ears off so he could be seen. He would retell the stories he would read and claim that he had done those things. Sometimes his parents would engage with him. Other times they would belittle his stories as silly and meaningless and tell him to stop talking. This treatment was discouraging for the little boy, but he would not let it stop him from being loved. When Holly was feeling particularly lonely, she tried to call her mother and sister. Most of the time, they did not answer. On the rare occasion they did answer, Holly was left feeling more alone than before. Her mother said cruel things to her, while her sister spoke with an eerie calmness in her voice and told her that they would never have a relationship for what she had done, as she congratulated her on her marriage. Her twin hoped that for Oren's sake, Holly and Tanner would be happy together. Holly was well and truly cut off by her entire family.